Right, so okie dokie, it should be doing something now, and I have no idea whether it is because that's just the way the cookie crumbles. I'm going to try and pull up various things which you can't see but I can see, and let's have a look. Is there anything happening? Is that me? Oh, it is me. I might even be able to hear myself. I shall shove on my headphones and see if anything's happening. And it's all buffering again. Oh, great. Anyway, if anybody does manage to see any of this, then hang in there and it might clear.
Doing it again.
It's doing it again. Buffer, buffer, buffer. If I bring up the dashboard, what does the dashboard say? Error, YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth stream, and as such viewers will experience buffering. Makes no sense. Makes no sense at all.
Should work. If it was that.
If it was that, I don't know that it is that. Stream health, poor. Viewer activity, stream settings, everything's as it was before. Stream health, go back again. Well, I'm there and I'm blurry, but I think I've stopped buffering now. I'm just on very, we're back to the 1950s, except that it's in colour. Anyway, let's see, it's got 2 watching now, and I shall type in there and say hello. It may work better, or it may not. Right, something seems to be happening. So, see what the thing says there again. Oh, it says excellent connection now. It just literally clicked over, so I wonder what Hope's doing. Anyway, right, okay. This is me. This is Wednesday, 28th of June, 2023, and it's the live. Yay! This one's titled "A Week is a Long Time." Hi-fi, videotape, radio, meaning of life, you name it. We can talk about it. So hopefully, it says there are 2 watching now. One of which is me. The other one's probably someone. All right. Oh. So that's okay. Right. I shall start. Today was an interesting day. I've been trying to get a video sorted, which may be of interest if you've been following what I've been doing this week. It's been a case of I was trying to get up, having had the discussion with you guys last week about the 78s. I was trying to get a couple of them up, and yeah, I put up the ones that I already had, which had gone up as short, so put them up as full lengths, and yeah, they sounded pretty good. But had the comment that the actual there was rumble. Oh, good. Yay. Louise Good says it's working, which is good. Righty-ho. And yeah, so there I was trying to upload this stuff, and I had a comment come through about there was a sound on it. The sound was it was suspected as being a hum loop by the contributor, but I could assure him it wasn't, because I'd killed that one, shot that one dead. No, what it was actually was rumble, and so I've been trying to investigate getting rid of the rumble this week. I did do a video on using Audacity to be able to sort out that sort of thing, so that is a plan B, so to speak. But the one I'm trying to sort out at the moment is the video on sorting out the rumble, actually the physical reason for the rumble. And the physical reason is that the motor's spinning so damn fast. Damn. Yeah, it's really, the motor, it sounds like it's trying to cut its way out of the box, which is not so good. Ah, hello Kelvin, how you doing? Parcel arrived, by the way, thank you. Yeah, the whole thing was, it's, well, if you think about it, when you've got a belt drive turntable and you alter the speed of the motor, you go from 33 to 45, it's not very much, it's a 30% increase. Then you go from 45 to 78, you're talking about 90% increase in speed, aren't you? You're almost doubling it. And so it goes zzz, and yeah, it's meant that I've actually been exploring the. Now everybody keeps on calling them handpin turntables, which I am not arguing with as such, but I went onto the handpin site, couldn't find any. They only had good stuff on there, and handpin is Korean, not Chinese. But you know, I can only go by what they say on their website. It does say they have production branches in, is it Korea? Or no, Taiwan actually, sorry. But it does say they have production facilities in China and a couple of other places. So, yeah, it's quite an interesting sort of bit of investigation trying to find out where some of these things come from. But I did find a AliExpress seller that was doing the exact same deck as what's in that, well, what's in most of the suitcase players, and what's in certainly in that the music centre I've got. And that one, it's would you believe it's £12.5. £12.5 plus £3.50 postage. So that's round figures, but yeah, for less than £16 you can get yourself a turntable assembly complete with pickup, cartridge, needle. All you got to do is plug it in. It's a bargain, and they reckon 3 days or 5 days delivery. Not very long, and yeah, I thought that was quite interesting from that point of view. The sound quality on those things is dubious, I think is the way I say it. Not on the actual cartridge, that's fine, and if you can spin the record at roughly the right speed, you're well away. But I've learned my way around that Crosley, and I've got to give them credit for the fact that they make it sound quite nice. When you're in the room, you're playing something on it, it sounds quite nice. And then you try and look at what's what, and it's awful. The signals coming out of it are awful. What they've done to those signals to make them do that is awful. But the actual thing sat there on the table, it sounds quite nice. Real shock. That was a real shock. Which sort of runs into something that I was going to say about there's a debate that some people have about specifications and sounds and things, and you know, it's not what it's specified to do, it's what it sounds like that's important. Well, I've always gone along with basically that theory until now, for the simple reason that if it sounds okay, but actually the signals are useless, what's the point? Because it becomes a freestanding thing, which is fine if that's what you want, if it's cheap enough. But if you actually want to use it as part of a system, you can't use it as a stepping stone, because an idea would be you'd buy yourself something like one of those carry about suitcase record players as a way to get started. You buy yourself a couple of records, you get yourself the scales so that you know you're not chewing it up with the stylus weight, and the whole thing. Got some funny messages coming up. So you make it's raining.
It's raining.
Your wool's not out there, is it?
No, I just put it in.
Oh, that was lucky.
It was raining.
All right. The wool's the important bit when the rain is falling. Real wool shrinks, and the other stuff just goes manky. Right. Okay. So yeah, what I was going to say was, if you had the situation like you used to in the old days, you'd get yourself a Dancet, and it would sound okay actually, or a Philips or whatever, and it'd be a basic turntable. But then you could rewire that turntable and make it into the beginning of your stereo system. And once you got that bit working, and you could then buy yourself a decent amplifier and some speakers, and then you could buy yourself a decent turntable to replace the original Dancet, and then you could work your way up and up and up into the appropriate scale that you wanted to be, which may or may not have been audiophile standard, or it might have just been better than the average guy down the road sort of thing. But you can't do that with this. With certainly, I'm only talking about, in this case, I'm really only talking about the one I actually know, which is this Crosley I've got. You cannot just do that. You cannot say, oh well, I'll use it as a basic turntable and I'll take the signal out and I'll feed it straight into a decent amplifier, unless you've got really good tone controls. I mean, if you could feed it into a graphic, you'd be all right. But if you just wanted to bung it into a I don't know, £100 amplifier with basic controls, it's not going to work. That was the thing. It's just not going to work. I don't want to give away too much about my follow-up video, but you might find it of interest. Hopefully. That's. I don't make them to bore people to death, but you never know. That's not. We talk about what the other people on YouTube are doing. Saw an interesting video from Techmoan, and he's talking about wall-mounted CD players, which was quite interesting, I thought. And the idea of having one seemed quite a good idea, using the CD player and the way he connected it up and things. I won't spoil his video if you haven't seen it, but it's worth having a look. And interesting price variations on things. Really, really weird. Westlife's just put up one about o'clock. I've only started to watch it, and it's. I agree with the premise in the actual title, but I'll let you watch that one. That one's quite interesting. The other one that Recordology's put up is all about what to look for in a turntable, which I thought was quite good. He's got some interesting insights. He didn't go for a Crosley. And what's the other one? There's just been the odd sort of stuff about specifications and things from some of the other guys. And an interesting week on YouTube. For me, it's been interesting trying to get things going. I introduced my new video with the words, "This one wasn't planned." Now, you've heard that before, but it really wasn't. However, strike while the iron's hot. When the problems are there, go for it. That's the way I look at it. And, seems to work all right. Okie dokie. Anybody got anything to say? Who have we got here? We got 5 now. I'm going to check out some tapes, which will be interesting. And so there'll be some more tape videos going up shortly. and I still have yet to get that video recorder working. That's really been a case of trying to squeeze it in the schedule of everything else that's been happening, which wasn't. I mean, the trouble is it needs to be planned to be done, and I need to get the bits and things, and I've been sort of a bit tied up with other things, trying to sort things out. I thought, oh, I'll put up a quick video the other day. 10 hours later, I managed to get something that looked sort of okay. Still hasn't gone up, but there we go. That's just the way things go. Right. Anybody got anything to say in there? It's the UK. It's about quarter past. It's about 8:15 UK time. Hot and sticky, not particularly pleasant because it's just started raining, but it is very. I think it's about 22 degrees and it's very humid, so it's a lot of people aren't going to be sleeping very well tonight, which is something a lot of people have been moaning about just recently. Now, well, there was something I was going to say, and I've forgotten what it was. Oh, yes. One of the videos I've done just recently, I thought, oh, I'd knock this up while I was
Sorry.
waiting to come on, and I think you might like this. If you've seen Calvin, very fetching pink socks you were wearing yesterday. Good old post office for taking a masterful picture. Yes, that's to you, Louise.
What? Sorry?
Kelvin says, very fetching pink socks you were wearing yesterday. Good old post office for taking a masterful picture.
Oh, really? I always got pink socks on.
Yes, they're not normally at the door.
I didn't realise they took a picture as well.
Ah,
He didn't make it known. I just signed for it.
all right, well, there you go.
I didn't realise he was taking a picture. There you go.
Yes, see, Big Brother is watching. It's one of those things. All right, I've actually spent. I was trying to illustrate and trying to comprehend some of the specifications which are on hi-fi stuff, because people obviously don't understand it. I mean, I don't understand a lot of it, most of it, in fact. But the things that I have understood. You know how you can know something, you can understand something, and you can realise something, and they're not always the same thing. Or, you can know that something's hot, but it doesn't mean you won't necessarily touch it. You can know that it will burn you, but it doesn't stop you doing it. A simple example is you go and lay on the beach. You go and lay on the beach and you get sunburnt. Well, you know you should have gone and put that sun cream on. And it would have been a good idea before you fell asleep, and you know you shouldn't have fallen asleep, but, doesn't it hurt? And it hurts more when you've done it than what you thought it was going to, even though you knew it would do if you did it. Follow the logic if you can. I did not understand when I was working out the numbers how big 120 dB was. But because it's logarithmic, it's huge. But when you're talking about, we'll record this or we'll play that, or it's only 3 dB or whatever, it's just numbers you throw around because, why wouldn't you? When you've got something like the 50 dB mark and you think, well, that's all right. And then somebody says, well, add 3 dB to it. And if the fact is, if you've got a stereo system and you disconnect one speaker, you're hard pushed to hear it if they're close together. As a volume change, you'll hear the one channel's gone down if it's giving you a stereo image, but the volume won't be very much different because you've lost a whole channel, which if you're running 10 watts, you've just lost 5 watts. But you don't really hear it that way because your ears don't work that way. But when I actually started working out what the figures were, I thought, oh, this is great. And have you ever tried to illustrate 100 billion? 100 billion. I asked Bing and it came up with the numbers, which I've shown the workings. So if you've got any arguments with them, then fine, please, argue back. But trying to illustrate 100 billion was interesting. And I thought, well, but how do you convert that to actually understand that when you're using Audacity, which is actually obviously audio and it's digital, how can you convert that to the idea that if you quietly record it, that's a good idea, or if you record it loud? Because whenever we've done recordings, we've always bashed the red, haven't we? That's not a euphemism. We've always turned it up until you're just hitting the peak, because you want to get as much signal on that tape as possible. Or now, of course, we're doing it on Audacity. We're getting as much signal into that machine as possible. Computer, laptop, whatever. And I thought, well, actually, see if this makes any sense. See if I can get them to work. I will bring up this one. What you should see here is fade. Boom. That is an illustration of the whale is the sound that you're trying to record, and the swimming pool is what you're holding it in. Now that whale is quite happy in that swimming pool, waving his mouth around. Look, but you see he's bashed aside there because he's got a bit of a dent. But he's quite happy in that swimming pool. He's not going to die, but he's not actually got any room to move. You're not going to find him doing somersaults and things in that pool, for the simple reason that it's just the right size to keep him in, not for him to actually have a happy life. So that's that picture. And then what I then came up with was, if I can find it, oh look, there's me looking at me. No, stop it. Right, if I go on to the next picture, which is that one. Now that's a much happier whale, although he doesn't look quite so happy and he's got a funny fin there. But he's in a much bigger swimming pool. Not a very much bigger swimming pool, but a bigger swimming pool. He could actually turn around in that. He could swim a few, well, he could do a bit in one direction, turn around and go back. He's never going to be the fittest whale in the world like that, but he is at least going to be able to do that. And that's like illustrating the second point, which is you can have it a bit bigger and you don't have to worry about it. And I thought, but how do we illustrate the 96 dB? Because when I put it into all the statistical spreadsheets and things, it said trying to compare a million to 100 million, no, 1,000 million, which was billion. When it was trying to compare it to a billion, and 96 dB is about 300 billion. When it was trying to compare it to, 3 billion. When you try to compare it to 1 billion, the scale was so big it produced basically two lines to say there was something here once upon a time, and then quite a tall line, which then they went to scientific notation and stuck to the power ofs on it, and there was nothing I could do about it. There was no way I could get a graphic that would illustrate the size difference between a CD with its 96 dB and a cassette deck with 60 or possibly 70 dB. So I thought, I'll make one. I have an image in my head, and I'll see if I can find it now. Probably can't, because it's not that one. Let's see, I did have it all prepared here. It's not that one. Still not that one. Oh, where's it gone? I shall have to open. Bear with. This is the trouble with trying to prepare things before you get in there. And they then fall over. How about that one? How about that one then? Yeah, there we go. There's a whale. It's on the top of the ocean. There's the ocean. It's very much like where the Titanic sunk, so it's very, very deep. But that whale is still swimming on the top. It's quite happily swimming on the top in the same way as the other two whales were swimming on the top. It's just it could dive and it can have a very nice life, and it could take so long to get down there and all the rest of it. It's a simile. I suppose it's almost a metaphor, I suppose. No, it's not. It's a simile. It's an exemplar. If you were to go in that direction, you could say, well, there's no harm in recording it all at the 0 dB mark, which is where the whale is on top of the water, in all three of the things. But it's the ability to have the depth, the strong, deep sounds and whatever else, the loud sounds. That is the difference. And so, yeah, I was quite happy with that. Took me a while to work it out. Took me longer to pull it up with the screen. Well, anyway, let's go back to what I should be on, which is not that. Display capture. Gone. Ah, there we go. That's me. And click. Back. Right. I'll bring up my original screen now, which is easier said than done. There it is. Oh, good. Okay. Does that make any sense to anybody? I just thought it was a way of explaining it. Did you notice that the thumbnail for this live, I thought I'd go for a headshot, but I couldn't find one I liked, so I went for the one that I got on there. I think it's a Sony. Anyway, electricity burns quite painfully. Yes, it does. I tell you what, if you've ever played with if you ever played with the CRTs inside a television and accidentally just brushed against the EHT, or worse actually, not the EHT so bad, but if you brush against the line scan or the field scan coils, oh boy does that burn, because they're quite high frequency, but because they're coming from an inductive load and they're high power, whereas the EHT of course is all volts and no amps. It's a strange one, that. So I wonder where, because I've had some communication with some of the other guys who normally come on the lives, but it's a strange day, strange month. So I wonder if anybody else is going to turn up today on the live. We've got 3. Stephen has been playing with his turntables and his digitalization, which is quite relevant. And Egil did send a message through. I think it was Egil saying that he was scheduled, so he was working last week and missed it. We haven't seen Wasim for a while, but yeah, it's not compulsory to come to these things, except for me. If I'm not here, it doesn't happen, which is a bit surprising sometimes when I'm sat here clicking buttons and nothing's working. That's a different story. Right. Anything anybody would like to ask, say, or talk about while I have a quick drink? I managed to work on a good example as to how not video, because we all know about video. Interesting, video, everybody knows what they like and they can see what they like, and we can all agree on what a good picture is. But we can't with audio. And I was watching something earlier on, and it's all about specifications, which is fine. And the question, what I said was, people say that they have an opinion on equipment which may not match the specifications, which is quite true. We said that earlier on. Things can sound different, and they can sound nice and whatever, and the actual specifications can be a bit iffy. But what in my head I'm looking for in hi-fi is, if somebody's got a trumpet and he plays the trumpet and I record him playing the trumpet, when I play it back, I'd like it to sound like a trumpet, not like a party popper, party thing. You know. I don't want to have sound that has been modified. I want to have sound that sounds like it originally was, albeit quieter, because I cannot fit a full 300-piece orchestra in my front room and have a realistic sound level. But when I'm playing back a recording of them, I'd like it to at least sound like they were doing it properly. And I worked on another simile. If you've got a Star Trek transporter and you put Captain Kirk in, and you then do the twinkly twinkly bit and you send him somewhere, wouldn't you be a bit upset if what came out the other end wasn't Captain Kirk, but was merely somebody in a shirt similar? And they probably did that in one of the episodes. In fact, they did, where they went into a different dimension. But the point being, if you've recorded something, you want to come out the other side a good representation of what went in there. Whereas, which is why I think personally that electronics and hi-fi is a technical thing rather than being a taste thing. Because I used to deal with a lot of people who used to say, "Oh, I don't like FM radio because it's so scratchy. I like that. I like a nice tone on my radio," which was fine. But when you've got a record, you go out and buy a record and you put it on, you've got no way of knowing what it should sound like. And when you're playing it back, you can say, "Oh, well, it's by Status Quo or whoever, and I know what they normally sound like." And you can twiddle your knobs and you can get a sound that you're happy with. But if you went into the studio and actually heard it being recorded and they were playing it as a session rather than individual bits, or even if you heard the playback of their original master tapes, it would not sound probably the way you've got it in your room, because you've set it up for what sounds nice to you, not the way you've got it, the way they've got it set up. So maybe their drums are louder than you've got your setting set to, or maybe they're not quite so shrill, or maybe they're more shrill on the high notes than you've got your set. Or maybe your speakers just don't do it very well, but you've no way of knowing. Whereas, if you are comparing things like a Stradivarius and a Chinese clone of a violin, and you sort of say, well, the Strat is worth £50 million and the Chinese clone is worth a tenner. Why is it like that? What is it about the Chinese clone? What is it about the Stradivarius that makes them value so different? Well, obviously, it helps if you can play them, but assuming that you've got a competent player, presumably they will get a nicer sound, a more pleasant sound out of the Stradivarius. It will behave better than the Chinese clone would do. Although the Chinese clone may be adequate to learn on, you're going to get to a point where it never gets any better. Whereas with the Strat, you can do the subtleties. I understand that. I understand that as being taste and choice. Why does a Fender sound better than, Marshall amps, Fender amps, all that sort of thing? People like what they like. And I think Marshall are the ones that got 11 on them. But, they are a choice. And when you're talking about, particularly with musical instruments and with amplification on musical instruments and microphones, again, you've got a choice. You can actually choose to go with the mic that gives it the mellow sound or the one that gives it the sharp sound, because that's the sound you're looking for. But when you're listening to hi-fi, all those choices have been made by the artist. What you want to do is hear the end result. And that seems to be something that people get confused with. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Could be. It's difficult to say. Oh, I got a heart. I had a heart. I wonder how that happened. Right, okay, so it's there's 5 watching now. If anybody on here other than Kelvin, they can type in hi. Kelvin can type in anything he wants, obviously, but I must learn to type. Got 4 likes, which is not bad, I suppose. Right. Well, if it's going to be sort of quiet and I've gone through everything, and if there's nobody coming back with questions and answers, then maybe it's just a day for me to get out the air conditioning brochure and start reading it. I have made the threat before. It's still here. It's under that envelope. Ooh, wonder what that was. No, it's still here. Yeah. This is why we don't have a problem sleeping at night. But that's a very thick book to tell you how to turn a fan on. But then it tells you a little bit more than that in there, but not a lot. It's very similar to a cassette deck manual. It tells you things that you don't think you're going to need until you try and do something. And then you suddenly find out that maybe you should have paid attention when you were reading it. It's strange how that happens. Anyway, okay, right. It says that was happening then. I shall... well, if there's nobody else here and there's nothing else to say, then maybe I ought to wind it up then. In which case I can just say thank you, Kelvin, for coming along, and the other 4. Things are changing all as I'm looking at things. Things are changing. Right. Okay. So what I will do then is I will wind it up today, because there are things that other people can be doing and I can be doing, and no, hang on, we've got somebody. Corresportivo 155. Hi. That's it's nice that you've dropped in. Yes, I'm pretty sure. That's this is the thing. You see, sometimes it takes half an hour for things to start happening, and I think Eggle and that come in around about half an hour in. Maybe I'm just checking something. I'm glad you dropped in, and if you've got anything you'd like to say, start typing, and we'll see where we go from there. What's happening there? Right. Yes, that's what I thought. Just checking the stream and stuff. That's doing all right. Okay. I was going to say about the thing trying to get the digitalisation of these 78s. They seem to be going quite popular, and I'm not having too much of a problem with the copyright on them. Does anybody actually on here know how to clean a 78 without dissolving it or making a mess of it? Because I must admit, my experience with 78s was as a 5-year-old, playing Danny Kaye records on a Dance It record player with my cousin, and we thought it was great because it was his famous one. I can't remember the title of it now. Ugly Duckling, that's the one, and we thought that was great. And there was another one he had as well, and I think that was the Emperor's Clothes, might have been. But we used to play that, and it was great. Really enjoyed that, but we didn't know what we were listening to, and we didn't treat it very well. Now, I'm not saying that when I get hold of these 78s I turn into a 5-year-old, but what I am saying is I don't actually know how to clean them. I'm guessing that brushes are good. I've read that alcohol is not, so you can't use vinyl cleaner on them. I'm thinking that water should be okay, because they are. But are they waterproof or are they water soluble? This is the thing, you see. I mean, most of the time when I'm talking to people about technology, I'm actually in a situation where I was around and they weren't, which means that I've got an advantage on them. But when it comes to these 78s, yes, I remember them. Yes, they were around. No, they weren't something I used a lot of. And so whilst I know some of the things, I don't know as much about that as I do about the other stuff, because I used to actually repair that stuff and work it and play with it and all the rest of it. But 78s was, well, my dad bought a radiogram, and he was really upset because he had one with 78s turntable on it, and then they stopped doing 78s. And he was never a big record collector anyway, but he obviously went straight on to, because it was mono radiogram, had a lovely shortwave radio in it, really nice. I think it was an HMV, but it was never intended to be hi-fi. It was just sounded nice. It used to get hot and smell funny because it had valves in it, or anybody from the rest of the world, tubes. It was quite a nice piece of kit. It was very expensive, but he was upset because he spent on getting something that they then stopped doing. But then, I don't know, that's been the story of my life most of the time. I bought Betamax, yep. Bought V2000, yep. Bought Mini DV, yep. You go down the shops and try and buy one now. You can't. It's technology is strange. We crave it, we want it, and then not a lot happens going. Have you ever heard one of those modern vertical stack PA systems compared to the traditional wall of speakers? No, I haven't. I'm aware that I used to have people come in with, when I was running my shop, my repair shop, I used to have people come in with guitar amps and things, and they used to say, it doesn't sound right. And so I'd run tests on it, find there was nothing wrong with it, and then I'd just clean up all the pins and things just to give them the opportunity to pay the bill. But, you know, it was a 30 watt amp, it'd be running 30 watts or whatever. But have you heard them? And what's your opinion on them? As a bit of an aside, I've been involved with some not PAs but some monitors we use for they're the Behringer and similar Studio Master monitors. They're 125 watts RMS mono monitor, speaker, amplifier, mixer thing. Very good they are. They do produce a lot of sound out of a very small box. If you ever buy one, don't let anybody pat test it because it blows them up. But we didn't let somebody pat test it, but it was in a cupboard in a school where we were allowed to keep our equipment, and they had the guy come around with a pat tester, and he blew up our very expensive, relatively expensive PA amp because he pat tested it and blew it apart, and then denied all knowledge of it. But he did stick the pat test thing on. It passed the pat test, never worked again, but it passed the pat test. So I have a spare speaker because that's all you can do with these modules. Quite annoying, really. But it was quite interesting once. The biggest stack. I don't go to pop concerts, which is a bit of a shame. But the last time I went to a pop concert, we got very sore. We got fed up with everybody singing, except for the people. We couldn't actually. It was what was it? It was the Party in the Park. Hyde Park, and it was a good atmosphere, but it was quite badly done. The sound from the stage came into your ears at a different point to the sound from the slave speakers, so you had tremendous reverb type effect, and you couldn't actually see anything. And because of the speaker sounds cancelling out, you couldn't really hear anything except for the people singing, and that wasn't really what we were there for them. We were there for the artists. And I think, was the weather good?
It was all right.
Yeah, the weather wasn't too bad, but that was the only good thing about it from my point of view. I mean, I would like to go and see a proper band, somebody. If I say like the Beatles, I don't mean an impression of the Beatles. I mean, a proper, upstanding, they can do it properly musical band, and I'd like to go and see something like that. But from what I've seen, the tickets sell out very quickly. They're very expensive, and there's no guarantee when you get there what you're going to actually get. My daughter keeps going to. Who does she go and see?
All sorts of people.
Yeah, but that solo singer, wasn't it? George.
I don't know.
No. She went to see somebody a little while ago. She said it was good. Right. Okie dokie. Right. I think we've run out of time now. And I'd like to say thank you to Curio Sportivo 155. I'd like to say thank you for coming in. And if you've got anything to say, now would be the time. Oh, Eggle. Eggle's home. Right, good. Hello, Eggle. And I'll stay a little bit longer there. I should put these back to 8:30, shouldn't I? Then it'd be able to fit. Eggle says he works too much. Kelvin says yes, they are night and day audience side. No matter where you are in the audience, they sound pretty much the same. Yeah. That's good then. Most of the things I've been to have been amateur, where they start talking in. I've always thought I went to one place and they actually got it right. They managed to get this. I don't know. It was a semi-amateur thing, but they had all the slave speakers, and it almost didn't matter where you were. The sound that you got to your ears was right, which I don't know how they did it. They must have had delay lines in it, because obviously if you just feed the speaker with the straight signal, that's travelling at the speed of light, nearly, and the sound coming out of that speaker is now travelling at the speed of sound. You've got to get your timings right and point them in the right direction. So one thing we went to, they actually had the sound got to the slave speaker at the time that the sound would have got to the slave speaker, and it was almost like you just gave it a little bit more of a push to come along. It's really, really brilliant. As I say, it's one of those. I don't know if it's all science, whether it's science and art, but obviously skilled personnel doing that. And I love. One of the problems I have when I go to shows and things, my daughter's been doing it to an extent as well, because she's decided to go into stage production stuff. She's going to university next year, which is good. One of the things. One of the things that I'll get onto your question in a minute, Eggle. One of the problems I always found as a youngster was I used to like looking in the back of the TV when somebody had a new TV, see what bits glowed, what the differences were, and when I got involved in some sort of TV production, as in I was going in the studios, trying to watch a TV program at home without seeing how they did it was always a problem. So you learn not to ask the questions, or you have to block out the answers, and it's not all that easy sometimes. Right, let's see what Eggle's got to say. Eggle says, tell me about video hi-fi. There were some dudes in the beginning of the 80s were doing it to the extreme. Video hi-fi. And then he says he means VHS. Right. VHS hi-fi is an analog sound system where they, in the same way as the video is recorded on the tape, they record, basically, this is very simplified, they put the audio onto a carrier signal, which is much the same as a bias signal when you get down to it. But anyway, they put it onto an RF carrier signal, which they then record directly onto the tape. They run it using azimuth as a method of keeping the sound separate, and you've got the two heads from the VHS that are actually doing the recording, and then you've got two heads from the sound which are doing the recording, which are slightly offset from the main video heads, and so they are recording alongside or over the original recordings of the picture. When you play back, you get an extremely good when you play it back, you get an extremely good replay, because you're basically you're up in the megahertz with the carrier frequency. Because don't forget, TV signals, we're looking at well, just trying to think what standard TV is in terms of megahertz. I think it's about 2 megs. So you've certainly got the ability to have a 2 meg signal, which of course audio only needs to be 20k. So you get a very good, very high quality audio signal off, which is why they can do it on the Super SP type settings. The American ones really go really slow. Problem with it is you get the slower you go, the more effect dropouts have. But it does mean you got a VHS hi-fi or beta hi-fi, come to that, is very similar in specification to the standard definition on a CD, 96 dB or thereabouts. It does mean that you get a good thing. The only trouble with VHS hi-fi is that you can get some really bad tracking problems, and there's compatibility between some of the machines. So you could well get a good recording which plays back on your machine fine. You give it to a friend and they will play it back on their machine, and it will be going brrrr, because it's mistracking slightly, and depending on the quality of your machine and the knobs and features you got on it, it may or not be able to pull it in. There was a lot of VHS hi-fi stereo films produced coming to the end. They always had standard linear tracks on them as well, and that worked. That was always the backup. Now, Kelvin says the BBC did a shoddy job with the TV mix at Glastonbury. I must admit I didn't really watch it. I had a quick look at
that as well.
Huh?
Other people have said that as well.
Yeah.
You couldn't hear the vocals.
Couldn't hear the vocals. All right. The wasn't impressed. We tried watching Elton John, but we didn't think he was going to be very good, and we were duly he wasn't very good. That's not to say that he's not actually. That's not really true to say. We came to the conclusion that he's very good for somebody of his age, but he should do new stuff that is written by him for him with his current voice, rather than singing the old stuff, which he can't really manage to do so well. It's a shame when you hear him try and sing, I don't know, any of them really, Rocket Man or whatever, when his voice just can't do that anymore. But he has got a nice voice if he sings stuff that's in his range. And he's obviously a bit flamboyant and quite good. Now, Kelvin says, I love Hi-Fi VHS, and when Nikam was introduced, it was a game changer for me. Yeah, I actually bought a Nikam decoder box and was running that into my stereo system. But then, you see, when I was a kid, we actually we managed to decouple the signal and get a non-mains level signal out and run that into an amplifier. My dad actually bought and made an FM. We made an FM receiver that would actually pick up the sound from the carrier, the FM carrier on the TV. That was very good. A bit fiddly to set up, but that was very good. And then when, as you say, the Nikam came out, that was brilliant. That really was good. Egil says he was living in Denmark at the time, and they picked up some German TV in A2 stereo. It's pretty good. A2 stereo, I don't know what that one is. I know that Nikam was developed by the BBC initially, and then it became a co-production. Nearly instantaneous compounded audio modulation. Oh God, I haven't thought about that for How long we've been together? 30 years.
Mm.
Yeah, I haven't thought about that for about 30 years. But there we go. Some things just come into your head and stay there. Can't remember what I had for breakfast. But I can remember what...
And granola.
Yogurt and granola, I've been reliably informed.
That's what we have every morning.
That's only so that we can remember it, you know.
Yes.
Yes. Crispito 155. Ufo arrived today, but have some house remodelling to do tomorrow. So maybe Friday I can compare Hampin to Technics. Ah, right. Yes, I know where we're going from here because I had an email, didn't I? Let me just check that before I make a boo-boo. Do-do-do-do-do. Yeah. Ding, 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 ding. Boom, 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 boom. Yep, that's what I thought it was. Okay, yes. I will just point out that Curio Sportif 155 is Stephen. I hope that you manage to get your things sorted out soon. But yes, so the old team's back. So we got Egil, we got Kelvin, and we got Stephen, which is good. Right. So yes, you phone arrived today, but have some house remodelling to do. So maybe Friday compare handpin to Technics. Right. Yes. So you've got the good quality handpin. I know you said in the email about the thing. I was saying I looked to see these really cheap and cheerful things they do. They're not on the handpin site, which I thought was weird because I wanted to see what was, how they did things, and I just cut over to here. Bit of that, boom, fade. Aha, there we go. Right, this is the handpin site, as you can see on there. And when you click on our products, which is where it comes up, you got the that one, direct drive, no prices unfortunately, and that one, which is virtually the same thing without the USB. And then you got that one, and you got that one, again, direct drive. Then we go onto the belt drives, but these all look pretty reasonable to me. And that's it. Back to top is the only other option. BJ25 belt drive turntable is the lowest one, and that's got a proper tone arm on it. And I don't know if they've got any... Do they do bigger pictures? Yeah, that's slightly bigger. Can I zoom in? Yeah, oh, look at that. Oh, that's much better. It should have come up that size in the first place. It would have been a lot easier to read. But that says it's a 2-speed, full manual DC motor drive, belt drive, blah, blah, blah. And, wow, flutter. This is the thing I find really frustrating about this. Signal noise ratio, 50 dB, so I was right on there. It's nice to be proved right occasionally. Wow, flutter, 0.25% WRMS. That is awful. Why do people keep on having to go at other equipment that's got the same specification as that, but they say how wonderful their stuff is because it's theirs, I guess. But that 0.25% is not wonderful if you're going to accuse other machines of having that and being bad. And I'm sure other people know what I'm talking about on there. Let's have a look at this one. I wonder what this one's like. So if I click on there, this is their expensive one. I'm assuming it's the expensive one because it's the top of the range. And it says it's 2-speed, 33 1/3 and 45. Wow, flutter, less than 0.15%. I mean, the signal noise ratio is better at 60 dB. But, again, I wonder what cartridge they're using. It's not that wonderful, really, is it? So what do the things like the Technics and all that have? Well, is that a good turntable? This is what I always find so frustrating about electronics and equipment in general, is because until you buy it, you don't know whether it's any good or not, because you need to find somebody who does reviews. Oh, that's interesting. This one, which is the DJ45 direct drive, has better wow and flutter. It's 0.15%, which is getting better, but it's still nowhere near the 0.00 whatever that you'd get on a good cassette deck from the vintage era, or if you like, it's nearly as bad as the other stuff. I'm sure you're aware that I'm trying not to name certain names because it sounds like a broken record, but actually you sound like a broken record in the end. Trying not to sound like a broken record. I don't know. Strange. Anyway, but I couldn't find anything else under the heading of handpin. But I did find the stuff for. I did find the stuff from AliExpress, which I thought was amazing. Not that it existed. That I'll bring it up anyway. Now, where did that go? Bear with, I'll be there in a second. Doopy doo. I know exactly where it is, but this is how fast a computer can do these things. It's getting slower and slower and slower as I get more and more stuff on it. Actually, this is being pathetically slow, but there's still nothing I can do about it. Must have too much open. Yeah, it's on here somewhere. There we go.
It's all gone pink because it's just hit 9 o'clock.
Aha. There we go. This is not a whale. The whale's in the bit behind. Let's open that up there. This is what everybody keeps on calling a handpin turntable. £12.19. I told you it was about £12.50, didn't I? And £3.44. 15-day delivery. Sorry, I got that wrong earlier on. But that is exactly the thing. This is not actually this is the AliExpress listing, as you can see, but this is not the AliExpress webpage, because I knew where this was and I wasn't sure to get the right webpage. But yeah, where do those things come from? That's the question. Now I know Recordology normally quotes 2 makes for this sort of thing, but I'm pretty sure it's not handpin. Right, let me see what it says on here. Asian Rockstars. Go back to right. So Stephen says you fellow arrived. Okay. Egil says before Nicam on films you could choose between German or the original lingo. Was highly impressed by that. Yeah. They did certainly on the stereo systems they used all around the world were weird. You couldn't really do that with FM stereo because the separation wasn't great enough. But with Nicam you could. And what they did on some of the some of the other systems that they used stereo on was they actually broadcast 2 separate channels. And so so that you could switch from one or the other or both. So you could have left, right, or language 1, language 2, etc., which was always quite good. And they did that obviously on some of the VHS hi-fi stuff. It worked on the linear VHS because there was plenty of space for it, but of course it wasn't particularly high quality. Kelvin says, Asian rock stars, it's better to burn out than fade away. Referring presumably to, that'd be Elton John and the fact that he's doing whatever he's doing. I don't know. I mean, I've listened to Paul McCartney recently, and in my opinion, Paul McCartney can still sing quite well, but he doesn't tend to sing his old stuff, or if he does, it's in such a different arrangement it doesn't sound like he's doing the original song badly. But then you get somebody like Cliff, who the last time I heard him, I haven't heard him recently, but the last time I heard him was actually doing quite a good job. And when you hear Delilah chap, Tom Jones, he can still
Sting.
do it. Yeah, we were watching a thing about Sting yesterday doing an Alzheimer's record for Tony Christie, and yeah, Sting can do it. And so there are people who can. And when you get some of the ladies, Barbara Streisand, she can still do it. And I suppose you could say the same with Cher, but with all her auto tune on, you can't really tell. But yeah, some of them know when to stop, and some of them know when to alter, and some of them just don't. And it's just a shame because it can. I mean, you won't hear Sound of Music lady. Julie Andrews. You won't hear Julie Andrews doing it because she had a problem with her throat and she said, no, I'm not going to sing anymore. She didn't want it to ruin her memory. But, like I say, some people just need to. Because apparently Axl Rose didn't do too well. And who is the other guy? I should switch back to me, shouldn't I? Because I'm talking. Yeah, Axl Rose didn't do too well. And so maybe he should give up. Other people who had problems at Glastonbury, well, that's just one of those things, and more power to their elbow, and that they can keep going. Right. So Stephen, hang on, what have I got on here? Eggle says, talking about my generation. Who? Oh, sorry. Stephen says, I don't believe that Crosleys are handpinned, but the AT-LP60 is. The ones that seem to be AT-LP120 equivalents. All right, yes. I guess it could be that handpin do an OEM range, but I couldn't find anybody who actually stocked them other than AliExpress if they are handpin. There was an interesting video that I think it was Westlife did, and he was tracing it was Westlife, and he was tracing from the BSR which was made in Birmingham, right the way through to the modern stuff, and how it basically was in the same factory all the time. Once they went to China, they stayed in there, and it then stopped being BSR, but the plugs still fit in everything else, which was fun. Right, so Stephen says the Technics has a 0.045% whale flutter. It's also the basic model for 1977 at 70 dB signal noise ratio. Right, well that's the sort of figures I was looking at. Yeah, very good. Now Eggle says there's 2-channel sound or A2 stereo. I guess that's German. Kanalton. Wouldn't know, can only read it in English. But anyway, 2-channel sound is in quotes, or A2 stereo. One is an analog television sound transmission system used in Germany, Australia, Switzerland, Netherlands, and that used PAL B or PAL G, right? Well, we were on PAL I, so we were never going to get into that one. PAL G and PAL B, that was interesting because the difference between PAL B and PAL G was the video frequency bandwidth, but the sound was on 5.5 megahertz, I believe, whereas we used 6. And I used to, because where we were situated in Bucks, used to get foreigners coming in with the various NATO forces and whatever, so Americans and some Europeans. They would have bought equipment in various countries, in the NAFIs or the whatever the equivalent, the American equivalent is of that, and they'd then find they didn't work in the UK, and so I actually ended up changing quite a few crystals and things, trying to get the sound to work with the equipment they had rather than the equipment they wanted to use, which is interesting. Trying to get the spacing right. Sometimes you could just twiddle it. Sometimes it was a case of having to change a ceramic filter and things, or a modulator. Always try to keep the price down for them, but it's one of those things. The good stuff came with multiple switching, but very rarely did it switch between PAL I and PAL B. And it always said PAL BG, because although the specification was different, they were the same. It was the transmission that was different, not the reception. Kelvin says, I think modern manufacturers understate their specs to avoid being sued for false advertising. I think you could be right there, Kelvin. I think when you look at, well, certainly when you look at the TIAC 1200, that performs far better than the specifications say it should do, or that it could do. Some of the, obviously the clone stuff, like for instance that Crosley thing, they don't really say anything. In fact, a lot of equipment, they just don't mention specifications. Stephen says, Kelvin true, and so they have no waste in production. Yeah, that's where there used to be an advert in the UK, and John West. It's what John West rejects that makes John West the best. So that was using that sort of philosophy. If they had something, sometimes you'll find that a manufacturer will send something out with a different specification it actually has, but they'll sell those off, as in they physically work, but you can stick your own name on it, sort of thing. And a lot of people think, and this is one of the things that I found to be quite weird, when people have stuff like the JVC video recorders and the Ferguson video recorders, they were almost identical, 99.9% the same, but they would have maybe a different switch in a different place, which was fine. But sometimes when we actually got into the machines, I'd phone up Ferguson and talk to him about a JVC, because I knew, because the dealership I worked for, we had both JVC and Ferguson and Philips and Panasonic and something else. Anyway, so you'd be talking to him about a specific unit. Maybe you'd be talking to Ferguson about a TV. And while you're on, you say, oh, by the way, do you know anything about video recorders? And they'd say, well, our ones, yeah. And then you'd ask them, and if you were clever enough, you could actually sort of transpose the model numbers in your head. So a 3V29 became a JVC HR333 or whatever the equivalent was. It was 35 years ago. It's a long time ago. But the 3V29 was a Ferguson, and the HR333 was a JVC. I just don't know that they were compatible with each other. Anyway, so if you had a problem, you could say, oh, we've got a tracking fault on this. Quick think up the JVC number or the Ferguson number or whatever, and do you know anything about it? And they'd say, oh, no, we haven't had that problem. And then occasionally you'd sort of not so much let slip, because they were all in the game the same as we were. And you say, oh, well, have you heard of problems on them on the Ferguson version or whatever? Or sometimes they'd offer the information that they have heard of it being on a different make, but not their one. And so it would turn out that their version didn't have a particular value of component that the other one did, and that can sometimes trip you up. So it's not always true to say that they're just badly engineered. Sometimes this stuff can be totally different, and sometimes it's not. Anyway, what have we got on here? Crosley's. The Crosley is made in Taiwan, IIRC, or the head office is in Taiwan. Crosley is just a marketing company now, from what I understand. That's what, like Victrola and whatever. That's what Recordology says, and I have no reason to disbelieve them, because obviously they don't make the things themselves. There is. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so similar to everybody else's. And they are really made to a budget, I can tell you that. Now, that doesn't mean that all Crosley's crap, and I think the good turntable that they make or sell has got good reviews, and it looks very much like one of the proper brands. So Audio Technicas, I think it's true to say that they are a marketing company, and they buy stuff in and they sell it on. But then that's no different to when Ferguson was selling video recorders. They were buying them in and selling them on. They were selling TVs, which they were making themselves in their own factories, and the radios they were buying from a different company and were selling on. So, you know, all these companies do that. So it doesn't. What I had a conversation with somebody high up in one of these companies once, and I said to him, you know, so why should we buy yours as opposed to this one, which is exactly the same and costs 2/3 the price? He says, when it goes wrong, what are you going to do with it? So what do you mean? He said, well, we give you a 2-year guarantee. You're lucky if you get 6 months with that other company. And yeah, he was right. It wasn't the product that you were buying, it was the support. The fact that when something went majorly wrong, there was somebody at that particular company pulling their hair out trying to find a way around the problem. Whereas the company that just bought them in and sold them, all they did was bought them in and sold them. And when they went wrong, they weren't interested. Yeah, Tom Jones. Eggle, Tom Jones. Lock your daughters in the basement or anywhere else. Yes, he's amazing for his age, isn't he? You got to give it to him. He's absolutely amazing for his age. When you think he was a pop star in the 60s, along with people like Cilla Black, Petula Clark, etc., and he's still a pop star. That's, well, the only really competition he's got is Cliff, and Cliff hasn't done anything recently. The other guys like well, you've got some of the pop groups, I suppose, like the Rolling Stones and that, but you know, are they still doing it properly?
Rolling Stones are.
Yeah, I suppose the Rolling Stones. I mean, everybody takes the pee out of the guys because they look like, you know, they're very old, which they are. But yeah, they're doing okay. And I was just trying to think that you've got various other bands, but a lot of bands. We were looking at one the other day, and
Showaddy
Showaddy, yeah.
Who aren't.
But the thing is, a lot of the bands now, they are the original band, but they're not the original members. So it's a bit like Trigger's broom. You know, I had this broom for 25 years. It's only had 3 handles and 10 heads. It's just one of those things, because Showaddy is still officially Showaddy. And what was it, the Barron Knights we were looking at, wasn't it? They had about 10 different members.
Because we know one of them.
And yeah, we actually knew one of the Barron Knights. He was in a care home we were visiting. So yeah, it's just one of those things. You know, is Tom a crooner or what? Isn't or what?
Crooner?
He's not a crooner. He's never been a crooner. I'm just trying to. Yeah, he's a proper singer. Just trying to think. Did he ever? I don't think he's ever done a croon. Bing Crosby was a crooner, and who's the other guy? Frank Sinatra, yeah, and Dean Martin. They were all crooners. Frank Sinatra was a little bit weird. You wouldn't want to argue with him because you might get shot or concrete galoshes. Eggle says proper singer. You can't slander somebody who's dead. And I'm not naming anybody else. No, it's known that Sinatra was involved with the mafia. He was, I don't know how he was involved, but he was definitely involved with, because he had connections with them. And he was also involved with the FBI, but then so was Elvis was involved with the FBI as well. It's a different world in America. Different world. The English singers we've got, well, obviously we had, Want to Tell You a Story, Max Bygraves. Now he was good, but not necessarily to my taste. But when he had a few pop-ish hits. Anybody else? Andy Williams. No, not Andy Williams. He's American. Who's the Irish guy on the stool?
Val Doonican.
Val Doonican. Yeah, he was a crooner. He was very good. And yeah, I suppose Cliff's done the odd croon, but Cliff's really a rock and roller. And then Engelbert Humperdinck. Now would he be a crooner? Last Dance with You and all that sort of thing. Possibly. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Stephen's come up with Engelbert Humperdinck. Yeah. I thought of that before it came up there, but we're both on the same track there. Yes, he's very good. I actually saw. Now, which band was it? I was up in London. Didn't see them singing or anything, but they were stood in a lobby, being themselves. I think that might have been Shawadi Wadi, or one of the other bands of a similar thing. Because when I was going up and down, they were in there doing a pop video for themselves before pop videos were what you did. So they were ahead of themselves. I was up in Neal's Yard. There's a TV studios place up in Neal's Yard. It was quite nice. Yeah, okay. I think that's about it as far as that's concerned. Anybody got anything else to say? Stephen, when you get yourself sorted, keep me informed how you're getting on. That'd be good. And it's nice that you got Irregular. So thank you for coming in. And Kelvin, thank you again. It's nice to see all you guys there. Do you think it would be a good idea to put the live back to 8:30? Because if it fits in with people's times better, it would. It makes no difference to me. I'm here anyway. So maybe that's a thing for another community post. Elvis Eggle says Elvis was too busy in the jungle room for crooning, I guess. Yes.
Down in the jungle room, yeah. Walking in Memphis.
Walking in Memphis.
That's a life, walking in Memphis.
Is it?
There's a young lady waiting down in the jungle room.
Yeah, right, okay.
That's one of my songs.
Yeah.
That's what I sing.
Yes. I like Elvis songs, but I must admit I haven't studied the words too much. Although I do go to a singing group, and we did do an Elvis tribute concert, but didn't get very much of the rude ones or anything. Right. Anyway, back to the question. Anybody think that 8:30 would be a better idea, or worse, or whatever? If I don't get an answer on here, I shall put it on the community chat. We'll see where we go from there. Right then, people. Been going now for 82 minutes, so it's about right. And so I'll wrap it up there and see you next week. Time doesn't matter for me. I'm usually at work till midnight. Oh yes. Well, so it doesn't matter if you're around, you're around, and if you're not, you're not. Okay, Stephen, that's fine. As I say, keep me informed with how you're getting on with your bits and pieces, and I'll see you when I can. And meanwhile, I'll say Eggle, Stephen, and Kelvin, and anybody else who's interested and they want to put anything in the comments, then great. But thank you very much for coming, and I'll shut it down now and see you next week. Cheers.